2019 is coming to a close, and I still can't help but wonder what went wrong with Pikmin. The rumors were essentially confirmed, there was room in the Nintendo lineup this winter, and it just felt like it was time. And yet, we are still left wondering, does it even exist? So I can't help but feel something happened and it was further delayed, or that Nintendo is still planning another surprise mini direct here at the end of the year. So more on that another time, but man, Pikmin is clearly one of my favorite franchises on the Nintendo consoles, and so obviously I love to talk about the games. I've done several videos on it already, but I figured we could discuss what we can expect in the next entry and what features we want to see, what the story could be. So first, let's talk story. We'll recap the plots from the first 3 Pikmin games in under 1 minute. Pikmin 1 saw us crash land on a planet, collecting our scattered ship parts and desperately trying to survive an alien world. We meet Pikmin for the first time and document all of our interactions with these new species of life. We end the game launching back into space while the Pikmin bid us a sad farewell. In Pikmin 2, we headed back to the strange planet that Olimar crash landed on years ago, but this time we have a traveling companion, Louie. The president has sent us to collect treasures to save the massive debt that we are currently facing before we go completely bankrupt. Olimar and Louie set out with new Pikmin species as they try to collect enough treasures to save their planet. By the time Pikmin 3 comes around, we have a much deeper understanding of the world of Pikmin. This time we set out for the planet because of another impending doom, but this time it's the planet of Kopai, not Hakotate. With fears of famine, we must collect as many resources as we can from the land of Pikmin. We even have 3 new characters, Alf the engineer, Brittany the botanist, and Charlie the scared captain. We set out to collect fruits to create our own juice supply, but in this adventure, we also learn a lot about the Pikmin species by discovering artifacts that our team can decipher. We end by rescuing Olimar from a formidable foe and return to Kopai with seeds for a brighter future. So with all 3 games dealing with some sort of crisis, it probably makes sense that they would do something similar for Pikmin 4. What I hope is that Kopai is actually completely doomed and not savable just by going to the Pikmin planet to collect some resources. Here's what I imagine the opening cutscene and the beginning of the game to be like. 3 years have gone by since our intrepid explorers rescued Olimar and saved Kopai from famine. Alf and Brittany are seen studying plants in a remote lab on the Pikmin planet, while Olimar and Louie are just outside sitting with some Pikmin. This starts as a tutorial section where the player controls Louie and Charlie, while Olimar gives them tasks to complete to learn the basics. You create some new Pikmin, break a few barriers, and even build a couple structures. That will be a new feature. The tutorial ends with a Bulb Lord approaching the camp and you must defeat it, while Charlie receives a distress call from space. We flash over to Kopai where we see a massive asteroid approaching, and the residents are fleeing in spaceships with their coordinates locked onto the Pikmin planet. The ships try to navigate all the rocks hurling through space, but the Kopaites end up crashing in different locations. The cutscene follows the president's ship as it stutters to the ground somewhere near Olimar and his explorers' camp. The game opens with Olimar and Louie receiving a garbled message from the president, and they decide to set out to investigate the nearby crash. Olimar brings the president and his crew back to their camp, and he explains the situation that happened back in space. All the other Kopaites are still lost on this planet, unaware of all the dangerous creatures. Kopai is uninhabitable, and so the crew decides they must create a new home here on PNF 404, permanently. The plot could revolve around setting up a civilization and collecting resources, which could lead to a lot of interesting multiplayer concepts. More on that later. They must also rescue the lost Kopai people that crashed in several different areas on the planet. I think there is a lot of potential to explore the origins of the Pikmin species and discover how they came to be. This way the story could actually focus more on the Pikmin's point of view and more focus on studying their planet. Maybe you could unlock new abilities or forms for the Pikmin as you discover more about them and their anatomy. The plot is so fun to discuss because it's pretty much wide open. They could take it in any direction they want. I also wanted to share one alternative fan story that someone commented on one of my previous videos. So Glass Trial had this to say: if Pikmin 4 is coming out, I think this would be a good plot to it. There's a school at Hakote, and the teacher there is teaching the students how to drive ships, and they have to make groups of 4. All the groups were flying the ships until the main characters crashed into a meteor and fall into PNF 404, where they find the Pikmin. The goal of the game is similar to the first Pikmin game, but with 4 characters and new Pikmin and new enemies. So that could still also fit along a little bit with my story theory. So with my story as a premise, with the new civilization and everything on PNF 404, where could they take the gameplay from here? But first, I want to say multiplayer. For me, the Pikmin 3 campaign was by far the worst of the trilogy. All my hours spent in the game were in the multiplayer modes. They were truly the shining gem of the whole experience. Now, I'm not trying to say the story was necessarily bad. I actually think it was fine. It's just it was so short. The game was so incredibly short, and it was the shortest of all 3 games. So if you've never tried the multiplayer modes in Pikmin 3, there were basically 3 different modes you could play: Gathering Fruit, Enemy Battles, and a Boss Rush Challenge. There was also a 4th option, which was a bingo versus game where you completed to gather all the items as fast as possible, but I didn't spend as much time in that mode. Now, Pikmin 2 and especially Pikmin 3 really missed out on not having the campaign be multiplayer. Pikmin 3 had you controlling 3 characters and just made no sense not to at least have local co-op. It made it really challenging trying to do different tasks because you had to constantly be flipping through all 3 of your characters. If we get larger worlds to explore, dividing tasks between 2 teams of 2 or even 4 separate players would open up so much to the game. Yeah, it would be cool for local co-op, but what if they opened that up to the online space as well? Think about what kinds of puzzles or enemies that could be introduced that would require multiple players to solve. Maybe these are extra missions, and maybe your AI can help you complete them if you don't have someone playing with you. I still would also include a challenge mode like Pikmin 3 and even add in some new minigames. I'm thinking things more mission based here. They could also impose limitations like specific colors of Pikmin aren't available, and you have a time limit and other things as well, but I really think they also still need to keep some sort of challenge mode in Pikmin 4. Now, obviously we need more species of Pikmin in the next game. I already did a video discussing this a bit, so be sure to check this out, but the new types that are introduced in Pikmin 4 should be more complex and unique than what we've gotten in the past. Even the colors we already have could get refreshed a bit with new abilities and a fresh look. Specifically for these new types, I want them to look different than the typical body type and also have some unique new abilities. We should get more than just 1 or 2 types. I'll read through a few of my favorite ideas from all of you from my previous Pikmin video. So Canny Rect EXE came up with the idea of a goo Pikmin. These Pikmin are entirely made of liquid. They have completely white, pupilless eyes, and they're transparent, meaning that they have no color themselves. These Pikmin cannot be obtained via onions. Instead, they must be obtained by throwing Pikmin into transparent candy pop buds. One of these buds can produce 5 goo Pikmin, and the candy pop buds come back the next day, or the next time you enter the dungeon in which you found them. Goo Pikmin are extremely sticky. They can attach to walls or upside down platforms and will only detach if they're called down. When they latch onto an enemy, goo Pikmin will cause it to move slowly and more sluggishly. The more goo Pikmin are on an enemy, the slower it will become. They cannot be shaken off by the enemy either. Because of their unique properties, they can attack an enemy such as a plasm or water wraith even when they are in their transparent forms. If they come into contact with water, ice, or fire hazards, they die instantly. These Pikmin also can't be grabbed with enemy hands, but they can be eaten, crushed, and electrocuted. Also, they are the only Pikmin that can break goo walls or carry back goo-encrusted items without getting stuck or dying. Unlike other Pikmin, when they're first made, a lily pad will be where other Pikmin's leaves would be. As it develops, it turns into a lily pad bud, then finally into a lily pad flower. Their habitats would be caves, areas like the formidable oak, and grasslands, and they would usually be found in pretty small numbers. Now, this was really one of the most unique ideas from that video. I didn't see anyone else really talking about something sort of like this, but it's really cool, like having something that could sort of shapeshift. I really like the idea with the battling here where it could like slow down enemies. But yeah, this was one of the more unique ideas, very thorough, very well thought out idea, and I really appreciate the comment here, so thank you. The other one I want to touch on is the Bulbmin and Puffmin, which are actually species that already exist, and so a lot of people were mentioning that these should return and they should be more substantial in Pikmin 4. So some guy 18 had this to say about those types. The nocturnal idea is a fun one since it can even play in with some already existing types like Bulbmin and Puffmin. I always thought this was interesting, parasitic Pikmin like the Bulbmin. Something where you sacrifice the Pikmin to gain control of enemies. It could play into puzzles where different enemies have different abilities, although it'd have to be limited to smaller enemies like sheer grubs and skitterleaves, and all this ties into the nocturnal Pikmin idea because that's how they live. Puffmin were actually mushrooms which don't need sunlight. So yeah, I really like the idea of bringing back the Puffmin and Bulbmin. It'd be really cool to start controlling enemies, and maybe even a boss battle could be where you control like a very large enemy so you could fight another big enemy. There's just a lot of potential there, and I like the idea too with the Puffmin being mushrooms so you could use them at night. We're going to be talking a lot more about the nighttime thing because I have some ideas there, so more on that later, but bringing back Puffmin and Bulbmin is another really good idea. Now, I also want caves to return in Pikmin 4. Not everyone enjoyed them from Pikmin 2, but it's something that I loved and I wanted to come back in a larger way. These caves make the maps infinitely larger. Caves can be any number of floors and can be any theme they want, which doesn't even need to stay consistent between floors. It can add a lot of variety to the game, as well as some intense challenges since you can't return to your onion and you can't escape until you get to the end. I also want more open world and night exploring. We need more open world areas with longer day-night cycles to provide more in-depth experiences in these expansive worlds. Sure, the worlds we already have are pretty open and have branching paths, but the levels are still short. This will be even more important if caves don't make a return. The way I see it, I always think the lily pads that we ride would be an interesting travel mechanic. What if the world was broken up into several large sections where you traveled on lily pad to get around? So you would use lily pads to get around instead of flying up in space and landing back down again. This way you have a main hub location, and once you reach further areas, you can fast travel back by riding lily pads. This would also benefit the multiplayer aspect so different players can tackle objectives on opposite sides of the map on the same day. I just feel there's room to grow since I always felt the overall time spent in each level was kinda short. And this way the map would just be one large area with a hub location and you just travel out from there. Now, we won't be shooting back up into space each night to sleep, but rather sleeping at our base. However, my idea would be that once you collect certain materials or parts, or maybe you need certain Pikmin species, you could craft something that allows you to explore at night. You'd also be required to beat a boss of each area to unlock that map and allow you to explore that area at night. Otherwise, you have to return to the base at day's end. Now, for this game, I really wanted to just be set up where it's just a lot of different side quests. I'm thinking something similar to Xenoblade Chronicles X. I know that comparison might seem strange, but let me explain. In Xenoblade Chronicles X, you are on an alien planet because your home was destroyed. New LA is the start to a new society, but there is a lot of work still ahead. The divisions of Blade each have specific duties to help support the city. Curators collect materials, Harriers defeat dangerous monsters, Interceptors rescue residents, Mediators resolve issues between the citizens, Outfitters support weapon development, Pathfinders establish data probes, Prospectors collect minerals, and Reclaimers recover lost items. What we can take from here are the specific functions of each group. These will be the main tasks of Olimar and company as they try to survive and build a new home. You have a main hub location where you set off each day to tackle different missions. Maybe today you'd like to rescue some Kopai people who crashed around the planet, or maybe defeat a powerful enemy who is close to camp. Another day you set out to an unexplored territory just to see what you can discover. Maybe you just want to collect parts for new gear or build structures in your base instead. Missions could involve planting probes, collecting resources, neutralizing attacks, all the tasks of the Blade organization in Xenoblade Chronicles X. The world would be open and you have the freedom to choose what to do at your own pace. The total explorable terrain would be massive in comparison to the previous entries, but you still always return to this main hub. For each new resident to your new home though, you must have enough resources and food to support them. This will be the constraint in Pikmin 4, similar to the juice supply in the previous game. Maybe you also have energy consumption or base health to worry about too, but this is kind of the idea I'm going for. Lastly, the Pokédex for Pikmin needs to return, the Piklopedia. We at least need the theme to come back because it's the best track of the franchise. I really need to do a remix of it. With the fat synth beats and the plethora of information, I spent a lot of time flipping through the pages and reading all about my favorite bugs and creatures. It was one of the best features and it's a shame it didn't return in Pikmin 3. I fully expect this to come back, or at least something similar, especially if the story takes the route of more scientific studies on the ecosystem of the planet of PNF 404. So yeah, I've definitely spent a lot of time thinking about this. I have a lot of thoughts on the next game. I really hope we see it at some point. Does it exist? I think it still exists, like I said. I think something just happened and it just either got delayed or just didn't quite fit in with Nintendo's plans or something, but I really think Pikmin is not dead. Please don't worry. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, it doesn't exist or whatever, but I don't think that's true. I really think it does exist, so we just keep needing to be patient. I know it sucks. I'm with you, but this is why I want to make videos like this so we can keep talking about it, keep the hype up, and hope that it's coming soon. What do you guys want to see in the next Pikmin games? What do you think the story will be? What kind of features do you want to see? Be sure to also check out my video on Pikmin species and let me know what new Pikmin type you'd like to see as well. But that's going to be it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.